videos at all, so yeah. So let's get into it. As you've seen in my last video, my last book video, I was currently reading this book, but now I've finished it. I can tell you all about that. Then I have the two books that I would like to read, that I would love to read after this one. So I have, well, okay, this one I actually did read like a little bit of, but I never finished it, so I might want to finish this. This is Bridgerton, the Duke and I, Daphne's story. I just said that I don't like romance books, but I love the Bridgerton show, so you know, this is my one that I really like. So this one, and then Bliss Montage by Ling Ma. So we'll get into those later. Now, let's get into Cleopatra and Frankenstein, shall we? This is the bookmark that I like to use every now and then. It's like a postcard that my friend brought me back from her trip to Japan. My lovely friend is and on the back, I'm not sure what this says at all. I don't know if it's just like the receipt or something, but I just kept it in. It's very cute though, see? It's like a illustration of what appears to be a woman kneeling over a pond. I think it's a very lovely, serene scene. So that's like the bookmark that I use. Okay. If you did not watch the last video where I talked briefly a little bit about this book, then I highly suggest that you watch that one as well. But I just finished reading this literally tonight, and I absolutely had to sit down and tell you guys my thoughts. So, in case you didn't watch the last one, let me just read you the back, just so you know the main synopsis. An addictive, humorous, and poignant debut novel about the shock waves caused by one couple's impulsive marriage. 24-year-old British painter Cleo has escaped from England to New York and is still finding her place in the sleepless city when, a few months before her student visa ends, she meets Frank. Frank is 20 years older and a self-made success, and his life is full of all the excesses Cleo's lacks. When I'm whispering, I try to be very gentle with the sounds, so I kind of go, and it's almost like I have a lisp. I have noticed that in videos, and I was as hilarious as it is heartbreaking, entertaining as it is deeply moving, Cleopatra and Frankenstein is a painfully relatable debut about the spontaneous decisions and imperfect relationships that shape entire lives. So, if that sounds like a very interesting book to you, then I would suggest that you skip ahead because I'm going to reveal spoilers. I'm going to talk about the book and I'm going to say what I thought about it. So, just letting you know if you're intrigued. And I do highly recommend you read this book. It's phenomenal. So let me just get that off my chest that on the matchi meter, this is, I would say, a solid 5-star book, which is pretty high praise. I would not give something 5 stars for no reason. This book is the first book in a while that I have truly loved every bit of it, and it's taken me on such a journey that it's gonna stick with me for a long time. This is one of those books that just really impacted me. And if you're someone that likes to read, I think you know what I mean when you finally finish a book and you kind of feel changed as a person. Like, wow, what a journey. So, my thoughts are that this book is incredibly honest and really heartbreaking because it's so real and authentic, and there's just no punches held back. It's just the real world almost. So Cleo meets Frank, and they kind of meet and right away get into a relationship together. It's very impulsive. The first night that they meet, they already sleep together. And I'm not passing judgment at all. But, I think it's interesting because just even from their first encounter, I think you can already get glimpses that this might not be, the best thing. What I really love is that the chapters kind of go by months, which I love, and they follow a different character in each chapter. But it is at the same time not from first person point of view. It's still third person, but however, we're just following a different character, interacting with all the other characters in the same chapter, if that makes sense. So, it's really interesting because it can be like, when Cleo meets him, she thinks, oh man, I shouldn't have put too much makeup on today. I feel like I look clownish. Oh man, I think I did too much, blah 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 blah, because she likes this guy, Frank. But then in Frank's point of view, he thinks that she's like the most beautiful, glamorous thing he's ever seen. And I like that we get those different point of views on the same interaction. So, Cleo's best friend in New York is named Quentin, and I feel really sad for him because he unfortunately befriends and kind of gets with this very, very bad influence. He already kind of had a drug problem while still trying to embrace, his gender identity and expression and trying to be himself. He has a closet full of women's clothes, and he, very much a big character, trying to feel confident. And he's interesting because he comes from a Polish family that's very rich, his grandma's money, that his grandma sends him an allowance like every month, so you know, he's just like a party rich boy. But then he kind of gets mixed up with the wrong person, and he meets this guy at a very interesting party. And so he unfortunately gets into heavy drugs, whereas previously it was more just like, you know, alcohol, weed, and I guess the lighter stuff, if you want to say. Which is a shame, because at the end of the novel, Cleo reveals that he's very much in that drug, very dark drug moment. And I felt very sad, because I feel that out of all the characters, he did not get a happy ending, or, you know what I mean? It just felt like tragic. There was no relief for him, and I really feel for him. So, basically, Frank has an alcohol addiction, and Cleo, she suffers with depression, and her mother suffered from it as well, and her mother actually took her own life. And I have to remember to put a trigger warning on this video in the description, because yeah, these are not themes that are for the light of heart, but you know, it's very real and honest, and I don't like to skirt around these type of subjects. I think it's important to talk about them and to remove stigma from these topics. So yeah, so basically Cleo starts to feel really isolated in her life with Frank, because he owns this advertising company, and he's pretty much, yeah, like the description, a self-made success, but he's like a high-functioning alcoholic. So she's alone a lot of the time, and she also wants to paint and make art, but she's falling deeper and deeper in her depression, and Frank comes home drunk anyway, so he's not noticing it. He's not there, you know. So basically it keeps building up, and then we're introduced in the middle of the book, we're introduced to a new character, and it's this new woman that has begun working at Frank's office, and she is closer to Frank's age, because remember, Frank is like 20 years older than Cleo. This woman is named Eleanor, and she is closer to Frank's age, and right away you can tell she has a crush on Frank. And as soon as I got to that, I was like, oh no, oh no. It's bad enough that Cleo has to deal with an alcoholic husband that's never there for her, and also being isolated, but also now there might be another woman. I felt so bad, but then basically Cleo gets deeper and deeper in this, and her and Frank fight a lot. They don't even, sleep in the same bed, and he's getting closer to Eleanor, and then Frank's company wins like this competition thing, and they're set to go for like a month or two to some location to be filming ads for something I can't remember. And he wants Cleo to come with him, but she refuses to. And while Frank is gone, it is now known that, I guess this has been happening, or it is gonna happen, or I don't know, that Cleo is now having an affair with Frank's best friend named Anders. And Anders is this like says that she started doing this because she wanted to feel something, and also she saw the emails that Frank was exchanging with Eleanor, the lady from the office. And so, and Anders said, well, was there anything revealing in them? Like, what were the emails? And she was like, no. She's like, but they email a lot, and they send jokes to each other, and they laugh a lot. And the way it was written, it's like, oh. Because even if it's not physical cheating yet, it was emotional cheating. The way that they would share information, they were always going to lunches together, hanging out after work, and emotional cheating is cheating. However, that does not excuse what she started doing in return, in retaliation, basically. So, that's what I thought was so fascinating about this book, is that there is not one perfect character. All of these characters are extremely flawed, they're extremely real. There is not one person that you can be like, oh, poor them, because they do bad things as well. They're just human beings. And I think it's so sad when it's, you know, it can come from love, or what you think is love. Maybe it was just an impulsive desire, and it leads to something darker and just painful, and it's, yeah. But anyway, basically, some time passes, and Cleo gets worse and worse and worse, and basically, Anders is moving to LA. This all takes place in New York, so he's moving to LA, and he kind of cuts off Cleo, because he's like, this is, like, we can't do this, like, Frank's my best friend, all this stuff. And from Anders' point of view, he actually is falling in love with Cleo, like, he really feels for her, and he just cannot do that to Frank, but yeah, he could sleep with her, you know what I mean, so it's like, okay. So he moves to LA and just cuts Cleo off, and so Cleo's again alone, so then, unfortunately, Cleo does something very drastic, and it's a self-harm act, and Frank is the one that finds her, and basically she goes to a hospital, after that, and, you know, she's very detached, from Frank, and then they have, after she's let out of the hospital, they have a very sad, interaction at this cabin, like, upstate, because Frank didn't want to take her back to their apartment, and they both kind of yell at each other, and it's all very painful, and, you know, he's never there for her, but she's also distant and closed off because of the depression, so it's just back and forth, like, you know. So then, basically, they split up, but they're not divorced yet, but they split up, and, Cleo, goes to Rome. She goes to Rome on, like, a painting internship institution thing, so she kind of moves to Rome for that, and Eleanor from Frank's office, she is completely in love with Frank, and Frank is completely in love with her, and they start seeing each other, and it happens kind of after Eleanor's father passes away, and she lets Frank come and talk to her and all this, and, you know, it was about, even though they had never been intimate, they still had that relationship, so by the time their, like, first kiss happened, you know, it had been a long time. Then, oh, and there is other characters as well. There's Zoe, which is Frank's half-sister, younger sister. obviously, she might not be okay, or this, that, and whatever. So he goes to Rome to see Cleo, and this is the last part of the book. He visits her, and she's creating art. She's creating very beautiful art. And he kind of has this internal thoughts where he's like, she's so talented, but he doesn't know if she'll actually be successful, because it doesn't matter if you're passionate and talented. Sometimes you just won't be successful, whether that's as an artist, an actor, things like that. It's just very difficult, or a singer, So, Cleo is a bit better. She's like getting more clear-headed and everything. And she asks, Frank, so you're with Eleanor now? And Frank is like thrown off, like, oh my gosh, what do I say? Well, yes, I am. And she's like, well, I mean, it hurts, but... And in the book it said, when Cleo found out Frank was with Eleanor, it felt like being stung by a jellyfish, and like an instant electricity jolt that was painful and burning, but then over time became dull and faded, which is really sad. Because they still love each other. She still loves Frank so much, and also Frank has now gone sober with Eleanor, which I'm sure is its own frustrating thing for Cleo. It's like, so you couldn't go sober for me, but for this girl you did. Which is really sad, but it's one of those things where it's not a you problem, it's a that person problem. But I understood, like, that sadness, like, wow, so she gets the best version of you. I guess Cleo and Frank were just very mutually destructive, and they really lit each other up like that. So, and Eleanor kind of grounds him, I guess, whatever. I just wish that they had worked out, But then, yeah, Frank kind of has this thought where he's like, Cleo's so beautiful, like, she draws attention to herself in every room. And then it was something like, but Eleanor's different, she's like, there's something deeper and this, that, and whatever. And that part kind of annoyed me, because I was like, okay, so Cleo is like this, like, gorgeous, beautiful angel girl, and then Eleanor is like this older, not as attractive woman, but you're saying she has more depth to her. For what reason? You know what I mean? I don't understand. And I guess she is supposed to be kind of unattractive, because that's how they describe her in the book, but that's what I don't understand, because it's like, Cleo has so much depth and sturdiness, but it's one of those things where it's like, well, Frank just couldn't see that. He didn't see that in her. And it might have to do with the age difference. So, basically, the book ends with Cleo asking, who are your 5 people? Because they're watching birds flying, starlings, and each starling is only ever aware of 5 other birds, one above, one below, one in front, one on either side, like a star. And that's how they stay moving and in formation. So she asks, Frank, who are your 5 people? And he says, Zoe, Santiago, Anders, and he says, now Eleanor. And then he says, and you. So he's talking to Cleo, and you. That's 5. And she says, me? Question. You, said Frank, always you. They looked at each other. Cleo's face was serene as a cathedral. All around them the city was settling into the evening. A child cried for its mother. A bottle popped open. A motorbike roared. The starlings flew on. And that was the ending. And I really loved it. I really love that. It's you, it's still you, They still have that connection, they still have that depth. books that I've read in a very long time, so yeah, amazing. Finally, let's get into, at the end here, the books I want to read. So, this is Bridgerton, The Duke and I, Daphne's Story. If you guys haven't watched Bridgerton, you really should. It's such a good show. I didn't really like Penelope and Colin's season. I don't think it was done justice. But, so Daphne's story. So I watched the show, and now I'm trying to get into the books. So this is Daphne's story, and it's about her falling in love with the Duke. Simon Bassett, Duke of Hastings. And her name is Daphne Bridgerton. She's the oldest sister of the family. And so Simon is very rough around the edges, but he has a really interesting past. And Daphne is very insightful, witty, smart-mouthed, and just does not want to be with any guy, because this is in the Regency era, and they're supposed to be wed off to a wealthy husband, and she just does not want any part in that until she meets him. And this trope is kind of, it's like fake dating into real love. So yeah, I gotta get back into it and finish it up because it is really good. And this book is Bliss Montage by Ling Ma. And this is short stories. I really love fictional short stories. So, love and loneliness, connection and possession, friendship, motherhood, the idea of home. In Bliss Montage, Ling Ma brings us 8 wildly different tales that take on our everyday fears and fantasies. A woman lives in a mansion with her husband and all her ex-boyfriends. A toxic friendship comes to its breaking point with the resurgence of a drug that makes you invisible. An ancient folk ritual might heal you of anything if you bury yourself alive. And in Office Hours, winner of an O. Henry Prize, a film professor discovers a portal inside a closet. These and other scenarios investigate the ways that the outlandish, the ordinary are shocking, deceptively, heartbreakingly alike. I have a feeling I'm really gonna like this one. I have another bookmark sticking out of it. Barnes & Noble rewards. So I'm excited to read this one next. I love short stories. I had a bit of an issue this past year where my attention span got really difficult, and it was really sad for me because I love reading, but I was just so foggy brained and I just could not read a book. So it was helpful to have short stories because it was low effort and I knew that I could finish a